We'll just get started. I'm JVL from the Bulwark here with is it Legum?
Legum,
Legume?
that's right.
Legum. That's so funny. In my mind's eye, as I've read you for the last 6 years, it's always been Judd Legum, which
Yeah.
is funny because we have a joke that I also always thought that it was Don Lemon and not Don Lemon, and so I've classed up your last name, Judd Legum,
Yeah.
from Popular Information. One of the earliest Substacks, maybe the first political Substack, and I think the most impactful of all the Substack newsletters. Like Judd's, if you don't read it, Judd is like the guy who actually gets results. And it's been amazing to watch the growth of Popular Information. Judd, thanks for carving out some time on a Tuesday to sit down with me. Um,
Oh, well, thanks for having me. That was a very kind introduction as well, so I appreciate it.
everything is terrible, as it always is when we sit down for these things. So just moments ago, the American president started bleeding in response to the retaliatory tariffs imposed by Justin Trudeau. That there will then be reciprocal tariffs. He says so. The idea is like, well, we're gonna put tariffs on them. They're gonna put tariffs on. Well, we'll put more tariffs on them. And
Mhm.
I guess this is just the world we live in now. Um, but the Judd question I have for you is because your sort of specialty is corruption. I think, is that fair to say?
It's one of my core interests. I would say that's accurate.
Uh, I I have so I've always been very skeptical of Trump and tariffs. Skeptical meaning that I tend to think that he doesn't really mean it. Like he doesn't really believe in anything. And I viewed tariffs as a way for him to weaponize corruption because once you impose tariffs, you can then grant waivers. Is this What do you think? I mean, is he a true believer on this stuff, or is this just another way to get his hooks into everything?
I guess it depends on what your definition of a believer is. Does he believe that this is sound economic policy? I'm not sure Trump thinks that way. But if you look at this Trump second term in particular, certainly this was true in the first term, but I think it's really been accelerated in the second term, is there is a constant exploration of how can we maximize the power of the president as an individual, cutting out Congress, even cutting out in some cases his own cabinet officials. Because we sort of
Right.
have a lot Elon sort of lording over all of them and kind of getting at all of their business. And I think tariffs fits really clearly into that because it's something that the president can impose unilaterally, and
Hmm.
then and it puts him at the center. Gives him the makes him sort of the power center, especially when you're wielding essentially the U.S. consumer over all of these countries. So now the countries that Trump is targeting have to come to him, and then they have to cut a deal. And I think obviously that's something he likes to do. Let's cut a deal. And in the interim, there will be, I think as soon as this week, from what I've been reading, obviously it kind of depends on what your mix of products are in an individual store and where everything is sourced from. But there's very few things that don't have a connection to China, Mexico, or Canada. I mean, just
Right.
in the global, that's going to be a lot of stuff, and you're going to start to see prices go up. And the question is what moves Trump off of this? Is it the deal? How much pain is he willing to inflict? But in the meantime, that's how I view it. I think it's a centering of Trump, making him even more powerful, and having extra tariffs imposed, puts him at the center of the conversation.
Well, let me see if I can convert you on my corruption theory of this.
Yeah.
The Trump really has been a true innovator in corruption,
Hmm.
and the thing which I've been most impressed. This is like my anchor man. I'm not even mad. You ate the whole wheel of cheese. I'm impressed. Um, Turning libel lawsuits into vehicles for bribery. which is basically what he's done with CBS and the ABC. Right, he filed defamation suits against the two news news outlets for the purpose of being able to allow their parent companies to settle with him as a way of funneling money to him so that he could then, give them that is truly innovative in its own way, I guess.
And shows a lot of foresight, by the way, that
Yeah.
he anticipated that we would come to a time, and it's really a sad time when these companies would stop fighting these rather frivolous
Yeah.
lawsuits. There
Oh
really is
yeah.
there's no defamation. Nothing has happened here other
Nope.
than people did some very anodyne reporting on things that were true, suing them, and then anticipating that, yeah, at some point down the line, they may just give up and want to send him $10 million or view it as an
Yeah.
opportunity to send him $10 million or 25 million or whatever the going rate is
It's a
now
way to
to settle
monetize the
these
presidency,
lawsuits.
right? Like that is ultimately what it is. It's a way to monetize the presidency. I have the power of the presidency, and so I'm going to file this suit against you. You'll have to settle because you're going to have, if you're a big enough place, you'll have business before the government. And also, by the way, the whole thing gets wrapped up in an NDA. You can never talk about it. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
that actually is one of the more of all of the things that have happened. You really can't. The Republicans control the Congress, and I didn't have much faith that they were going to exercise oversight. That turned out to be true, at least at this point. You really can only expect Trump to follow through and do the things that he said that he was going to do. He's doing that, but the capitulation by not every major media organization, but a number of major media organizations, both in terms of these settlements and just kind of skewing news coverage to be more favorable to
yeah.
Trump, the editorial pages, etc. I mean, that's something that we didn't really see in the first term. Not that the coverage was great or perfect or anything like that, but you had more of an independent spirit, I think, to the press overall, and you really don't see that consistently anymore.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because it's of interest to the two of us as local DC. I'm not in DC anymore, but you're a
Yeah.
local boy and you're a DC guy. What are your thoughts on what's going down at the Washington Post?
It's it's saddening because the fact is there are a lot of great reporters who still work there, and every day
Oh
there's a
yeah.
lot of great important stories about the Trump administration that continue to be published. So it's not something that I really take any pleasure in.
No,
But
nobody should. By the
yeah,
way, nobody should take any pleasure in this. It's
yeah.
all very bad.
But I think that what we're seeing is if you look at what happened in the first term, Bezos was suing the Trump administration by saying that they're retaliating against him for because he owned the Washington Post, not giving him Blue Origin these contracts, and this is all laid out in legal papers. And I think there's just been a decision, and whether this reflects his personal ideology or maybe the evolution of his ideology, or what I think is more likely a raw economic decision, which is that this time it's going to be different. We
Right.
are going to turn Trump into an ally, and I don't care what impact it has on the paper, and I don't care what impact it has on my reputation. I'm going to do what's in my economic interest. I mean, you saw NPR has done great reporting on this. 250,000 people, I think, left when he canceled the Harris the
Yep.
endorsement of Harris. I think the last I saw was another 75,000 who left after this last decision to sort of take over the editorial page or the op-ed page. And I think it's really a decision almost like Musk has done with X. It's saying, okay, we kind of give up on the idea of making money on this. So we're going to
Right.
turn this into a public relations. We're going to weaponize it,
It's a loss
uh,
leader,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
for political purposes, and get Trump um, on our side. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think you can say, okay, well now it's limited to the op-ed page. Well, first it was limited to everything. I mean, when he took over, he was going to be hands off everything.
Right.
Then he sort of says, okay, well, now I'm going to get involved in just the editorial board. So I'm going to say no Harris endorsements, no presidential endorsements, by the way. And now he's saying, well, now it's not just the editorial, but now it's all opinion pieces, and they all have to meet my ideology. And so I think the thing that's upsetting to me is it's clearly just another half step away to say now it's everything. Now
Yeah.
it's the whole paper. And I think a lot of their very talented reporters are seeing the writing on the wall and moving to other places, moving to the Washington Post, moving to Substack, moving wherever they can so they can continue doing their work. And at the end of the day, you're going to have one less really robust outlet that's holding power to account.
Yeah.
That's what I think's going on.
Yeah. I think I agree. And the problem is, if you're at the Post, I think you're in an untenable position, and it's just a question of finding yourself a lifeboat to get out as fast as you can. I just don't think the in the medium term the paper is viable in that way. And I don't know. It's all very sad to me. Um, can we talk a little bit about crypto, which is
Yeah.
the other big vector for corruption here? So, I mean, everybody just forget that the Trump coin was launched. What, the Friday before his inauguration? Um, that would have been in any other timeline a presidency ending scandal. And now nobody even really remembers it. And he started a strategic crypto reserve, which I think is again funny, because one of the things that was spread by Russian disinfo about Biden was like, oh, Biden's going to take the American economy and turn all money into crypto, which was always just crazy. Like, it was just, but yeah. Uh, and you've written a little bit about Justin Sun already. You've got more. Can you tell me what the crypto thing is? All just scam, right?
I think
Wealth transfer.
especially I think you could actually maybe I'm very skeptical of all of it. I think you could
Right.
separate something like Bitcoin, which, for better or for worse, at least is decentralized. It's like a thing that exists and it's not under the
Sure.
control of like one or two crypto
Sure.
bros, right? So put that to one side. You could sort of argue, what is this speculative asset? What's it really doing? It's been around for a while. There's not many
Is
use
it a
cases to it.
security? Is it an
Yeah.
asset? Is it a
But
currency? Right.
but it's
Right.
not it's I don't think it's as corrupt as some of these other newer coins that are centrally controlled. The Trump coin's probably the one of the best examples. He owns almost all of them. The money is all flowing to him. He's taking advantage of his celebrity to make a profit. The interesting thing about this strategic crypto reserve is no one has bothered to explain. I'd love for anyone to explain what the strategic purpose of this would ever be for the United States and the public. Like, like you have a strategic oil reserve, and you could say, okay, yeah, there's a war, by Saudi Arabia, the tankers can't get over, and so you need some extra oil to counteract that. Okay, we can see that there's a possibility. What's the scenario when you say, oh well, we really need this Ripple token that doesn't really have
Yeah.
much of a
That-
use case of anything, instead of dollars, even though dollars are the world's reserve currency, can be
for
used
now.
right now and are used to buy and sell every possible thing. These coins are extremely expensive to use, are varying wildly in valuation. What's the scenario? I mean, what's even the hypothetical scenario where we're going to use this? The only people that benefit are the people who own these assets, and many of them are huge financial donors to Trump. The executives at Ripple donated And by the way, in Trump, actually, the new thing was he expanded and said it's not just going to be Bitcoin, it's going to be all of these very specific, somewhat obscure tokens are also going to be in there. They donated one of the company behind one of those tokens, Ripple, donated $5 million to the inauguration. Also, is funded on the scale of tens of millions of dollars this pro-Trump super PAC that supported a lot of the candidates and is going to continue to play a huge role um, in the midterm. So it's really a bailout for these people who have sunk a bunch of money into this or are really invested in the idea that these crypto coins are going to be the future. So if you don't own one of these coins, this is not. I can't imagine how this would benefit anyone. Um, and yeah, it's it
Well, it's
is
wealth transfer.
it's an amazing scam. And the Trump coin itself, just the fact that it's out there,
Sure.
not only is it was it a scandal on the day that it was announced, it continues to be a scandal because at any point anyone can transfer a virtually anonymously transfer virtually unlimited cash to Trump by buying up these
It's all you got to do.
by by buying up these tokens. It's really as someone who is at least kind of been involved for a couple of decades and kind of kept track of what counts as a scandal. I mean, this is unbelievable uh, uh, amount of corruption, just basically unlimited anonymous transfers of money to the president of the United States.
Yeah, and there's so many. I mean, once you start thinking about the details of the strategic crypto reserve, it gets even crazier, right? So, well, who knows when the purchasers are being made, right? Because if you know when the purchase is going to be made, then you know when to buy, right, and then when to sell, because the purchasing is going to spike the price. You have Don Jr. out there tweeting "buy the dip" and stuff and telling people to. I mean, the whole thing is, yeah, it's just a gigantic pump and dump scam, but now run by the federal government itself,
Yes, but
and
I
it's
think
astonishing.
one of the things that I thought about, and I think this to me may explain because I think a lot of people are kind of confused about, well, why is Trump allowing Elon Musk to share so much of the spotlight? Like, why is he okay with how prominent he is? Why is he okay with him essentially presiding over the first cabinet meeting? I mean, being the dominant
Yeah.
speaker of the first cabinet meeting. And I think that if you look at Trump's actual wealth prior to getting involved in these crypto scams, it has really been exponentially increased as a result of these new ventures, the Trump coin, the World Liberty Financial,
Yep.
which is another thing. I mean, he has made more money. A lot of it is on paper now, but there's a once you get the I mean, as Elon Musk has showed, once you have that wealth on paper, it's easy enough to convert it to actual
Oh yeah.
tangible things. You just borrow against it or do
Yeah,
whatever
you
you
borrow
want.
against it. This is what
Yeah.
they all do, right?
And he's made more money off this than he has in his entire real estate career.
Right.
So that's why I think he is so loyal to this crypto group is that they are doing what he always wanted. They are making him what he's always wanted to be, which is an actual billionaire rather than someone who just claims that he is a billionaire.
God help us.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of put a quarter in the machine about Justin Sun? The
Yeah.
SEC has magically stopped investigating Justin Sun, Chinese nationals behind a bunch of this stuff. I guess that's just again, like we're talking about all this other stuff, and the fact that the White House is directing the SEC to stop investigating people, kind of a big deal. Kind of the type of thing that
Yeah.
would have been again. We have 7 scandals a day that would have ended any other presidency, and nobody.
Yeah, I mean it's all of them. I mean it's Coinbase, it's Justin Sun, it's down the line. Even the ones that haven't been shut down yet. I mean you can only assume that it's coming. Ripple, one of these coins that's in the strategic reserve, they're being sued by the SEC too, and that lawsuit hasn't even been dropped yet based on the fact that they're marketing this coin illegally, and now we're announcing that we are going to, as the American people, purchase some unknown quantity of this coin as a strategic asset. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think especially the Justin Sun thing, he was very shameless about it, just posting on X, oh, I bought this. And the interesting thing about that is this was a flop before Justin Sun came in. Meaning, Justin Sun came in, bought 30 million tokens in the at the outset. I think he's up to 75 million. That was more than double the number of coins that were available before, that were purchased before then. And these coins, by the way, are worthless
Oh yeah.
because they just give you some voting right. You can't sell them, by the way. They're locked. Their value is locked. And they give you voting rights in a company that, as far as I can tell, doesn't do anything other than sell these tokens. And so,
This is the Liberty Financial, right?
yeah, World
Yep.
Liberty Financial. And Barron Trump, by the way, is their crypto visionary. So you have that to
That I
bank
can
on.
believe.
Yeah, that that you could bank on. But other than that, they're not doing anything. You have some voting stake in them, and you have Justin Sun. He's buying tens of millions of dollars, and then, oh, wouldn't you know, now he's seeing this very serious. And by the way, this was more than just a lot of these crypto companies. They got in trouble because they were selling these crypto tokens, and the SEC was arguing that they were securities and that they
Right.
should have filed. It's kind of a technical argument, right? Like, it's not what you normally think of as a crime. I think there's good reasons why you'd want them to register so that they don't mix up the assets and things like that. Like, you
Hope they
saw,
don't defraud
yeah,
investors. I mean, that's
so they
the
don't
reason
defraud
for
investors.
this, right? This is
But
the all. That's what the SEC is there
yeah,
for.
but it was more of a, there was some legal argument about what are these things, how should you really consider these things. Justin Sun was controlling all of these companies and was buying up these coins to boost up their value with one company and then selling them and pocketing the profits with another one. It was essentially a pump and dump scheme. There were lots of victims. This was appeared to be, from the allegations, clearly fraudulent activity. I mean, this was someone who
Yeah.
was committing crimes, and now through giving them enough money, was then let off. Or we don't know if he's going to be let off yet, but all of the prosecution has been paused on request by the SEC, and they're going to come to some sort of resolution that Justin Sun seems very happy about. So you can kind of guess exactly what's coming next. But yes, this is an all-time um, corruption scandal, just from A to Z. Watching it play out, I mean, I wrote about it initially with the first purchase, and you sort of think, oh, well, let's keep an eye on this and see what happens because this seems very fishy that you would allow someone. But then within a month, it's done. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it's brazen. There's not even a cover up. We used to at least have the
Right.
cover up part of these scandals.
The cover up is what used to get you in trouble,
Yeah.
and now we've advanced to the point where people feel like they don't even need to bother covering it up, and just do it.
Yes.
Um, God help us. All right, so I want to do our little AMA game since I don't know you. I want to ask you, how did you realize that Substack was the future of journalism? So, for people who don't know, Judd used to be Think Progress. He was an OG blogger. I think you founded Think Progress. So, isn't that your
That's right.
baby?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you were early to blogs, and then you left Think Progress. You stood up Popular Information, one of the very first Substacks. I don't know that I was a day one subscriber, but I was probably a week one subscriber to you. And the reason I watched you so closely is, in addition to like the content, I was Substack curious for the Bulwark because we were not on Substack, and I wanted to see what happened to you, and I wanted to see if you were able to make a go of it. And when you did, your success was a large part of what made me think, huh, maybe the Bulwark could be a good fit for Substack too. Um, so what did you see at the time? It was 2018, I guess, that
Yeah.
made you think, yeah, the marketplace is ready for this to be able to work.
I wish I could say that I saw it all laid out in front of me, but I really didn't. But I did, from my experience with Think Progress, which was partially supported by through a nonprofit Center for American Progress, progressive think tank, but also we had to kind of make our own revenue too. So we were involved in advertising, and I saw just what a horrendous kind of business model that was. Like, the money would come in one month, and then the next thing it would be gone, and you didn't know why. There were all these middlemen and folks who were taking cuts of your money. There was just no way really to run a newsroom off of it because I didn't know how much money you would have from one month to another.
Yeah.
So I knew that that wasn't the direction we wanted to go. So I was really became interested in the subscription model. I started offering just not just very kind of quietly like a membership model for Think Progress to kind of help support it. We were getting like a little bit of traction. I was sort of seeing, I saw a path there that we could account for like a lot of our revenue through this member. Like people seem to be into it. There were enough people who were into it. At the same time, that newsroom had grown. It was 40 people, and I just wasn't doing any reporting or writing. And I was thinking, I got to move on from this because I need to get back to doing what I like to do. I
Right.
don't want to manage. I don't want to spend all my time managing people. I was getting exhausted with that. And actually, I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal. I think it was one of the first articles about Substack, and it mentioned that Bill Bishop, who writes Cynicism,
I love Bill
you know,
Bishop.
so I
Love that
had,
guy.
and that he moved his China newsletter over to Substack, and made like six figures the first day. Or it was a success of some sort. And I had met Bill once, and he seemed like a smart. He just struck me as a smart guy. He definitely knew a lot about China, and I just thought, well, if Bill is doing it, well, it must be he must there must be something there. Like he wouldn't have done it just so. I kind of then just started fooling around with it and got in touch with Hamish, one of the founders, and it took me probably another 6 or 7 months. I mean, I had convinced myself for months actually that it would be a bad idea, that it might work for Bill because people would pay for this kind of very specific content about China because there's economic value in knowing what's going on in China. There's a million other political
Sure.
newsletters, and most of them are free. Maybe it won't work, but then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a shot for a year. So yeah, so that's basically how it happened. Just finding a place where I could the combination of this is set up for sort of a one person. I mean, I have three people who work with me now, but at the time, for the first couple of years, I just did it myself, and then also I really like the subscription model. I thought to me, I thought I see how this could work, and
Yeah.
it appealed to me.
Yeah. It's 1,000 true fans, right?
Yeah,
You get 1,000 people who are willing to support you, and then you can do everything else for free, right?
yeah,
That's the other thing.
yeah,
If you have a bunch of people who are willing to support you, it also then allows you what we do. Anybody who wants to belong to the Bulwark and but just can't swing it because life is expensive. There are people on fixed incomes that are they just email us and we take care of them because
yeah.
we have all these people who volunteer to pay. All right, your turn. Your question.
Yeah, I guess maybe along the same lines. I know that I guess I don't remember exactly, but I think at a certain point, the Bulwark was kind of half on Substack, half not on Substack,
Yes.
and then I know that at a certain point you transferred everything over. What was it that motivated you to do that?
So when we first came to Substack, the website was on WordPress, and we used Mailchimp, which I'm sure you and everybody else here knows
Mm.
as our email engine. And when we stood up the subscription product, Bulwark Plus, we decided to do that on Substack. But I am what's funny. So I'm not like politically conservative, but temperamentally, I am the most conservative person you've ever met.
Yeah.
Like I just like all change is bad. Anything new is likely to result in doom. And so I wanted to go real slow with Substack. And so I essentially used them as MailChimp. Like we moved the email newsletter product onto
Mhm.
Substack, but like held on to WordPress with both hands, and we figured out an integration on the back end to make it look to the world like it was all seamless, but it wasn't. And it wasn't until like it had really proved that it was going to work, and then they, it Substack proved like it was viable for us. And once we knew it was viable and we saw that it was growing as an ecosystem, so that I mean, Substack now has real platform network effects, yeah, for creators. I mean, I see that. I'm sure you see it. I think everybody on Substack sees it, and that's real. And once we saw indications that that tipping point was coming, that's when we were comfortable enough to go over.
Yeah.
Um, and But again, it's been great for us. But I always, I walk into a room and I look up to see what can fall on my head, and so that's, I'm
I think
waiting for
that's
the other
right.
shoe. Yeah,
All of these platforms, I've been burned by a number of them. Not Substack yet, but I'm definitely aware that it's possible. I guess
yeah,
let me. I'm gonna jump. I know that I have one more that I was thinking about that I
yeah,
wanted to ask you. Was that politics has changed fairly dramatically over the course of the Bulwark's existence, and I guess
yeah.
I'm just curious from your perspective. And certainly, I think maybe the outside perception of the Bulwark has changed as well. Um, but I'm wondering
Has it?
if I don't know. I think maybe I think I to me I feel like that maybe it's seen as more um kind of unapologetically critical of you know elements of the right that it might have been at the very beginning. But that might just be a perception thing. But I guess what I'm really curious about is, do you think that kind of the political grounding, sort of the base point for the reporting and everything else, has changed at the Bulwark, or is it just the outside environment that's changed?
I mean, I think both have changed.
Yeah,
So, I mean, the Bulwark did not do very much reporting at all. I mean, it was originally just sort of opinion and analysis. We slowly started adding reporting, and we've again, it was just conservative, right? What we were doing was working economically. The market was a good product market fit. I was willing to dip our toe a little bit more into reporting to see if that made sense.
yeah,
And as it did, and we got good feedback from the market on this, like people liked it and were willing to support it, we have been doing more of it. And so we have been bringing in. We just brought in this week Lauren Egan, a great reporter from Politico, who is going to write a newsletter called The Opposition for Us, which is going to just focus like a laser on like what's actually happening inside the Democratic Party. And it's going to be heavily reported. We've got Joe Perticone, who covers Congress for us. And so again, it's all been very slowly. It's like, one step, make sure the market is there for it, then take another step. Um, it's gratifying to hear you say that you think the public perception of the Bulwark has changed. I don't feel that way, but maybe that's my neuroses. I feel like we're going to be described as the never Trump conservative media outlet, the Bulwark, for the rest of our lives, which isn't
yeah.
really true.
I
But
don't think I think it has changed. I think
thank
that
you.
coming from sort of my the popular information says it on the about page. It's a progressive publication. I've always sort of identified as a progressive. I really just like stories, so I'm going to tell the
Sure.
stories that I find. But that's that's my politics. But I think among progressives, I think, to me, I feel like maybe 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, there might have been sort of a dismissal maybe of the Bulwark stuff to some degree, saying, oh yeah, it
Maybe.
just is the never Trump conservatives. But I feel like that has changed. I feel like now people are just like, oh, there's this,
Thank you.
there's a good story for the Bulwark. I mean, that's just my, from my little kind of quarter of the world, that's the
Well,
change
that's very
that
nice to hear.
that
My
that I've seen.
aspiration for it has always been that I want us to be the junior varsity for the Atlantic. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know if you're a magazine, like I'm a magazine guy in my bones. Like I love magazines. I love the history of magazines. Like the old Michael Kinsley New Republic is a thing that I would read and really cherish. I've read histories of the New Yorker, like, what it was like back in the Wallace Shawn days and stuff. Uh, and so I really, really, I've long been a partisan New Yorker. I think what Jeff Goldberg has done at the Atlantic over the last decade has been like the most important thing to happen in American magazines, probably in my lifetime. And the he's turned the Atlantic into the indispensable American magazine for this moment. And so like I know we can't do that just because of resources, and so we're different. But I like to think of us as a JV version of it. All right, so here's sort of a slightly depressing question for you. You, as I said from the top, like popular information is all about impact journalism. Like you do stories, and then people actually like change their behavior in the real world because of it, which is amazing. And I love watching it. I became a paying subscriber to you before you started locking anything, just because I am a subscriber junkie, and like I just want to support everybody. And so I just like I spend $5,000 a year on magazine subscriptions and stuff. Um, but like for instance, after January 6th, you went very hard at the corporations who had ties to Republicans, and you got them to change their behavior, which was amazing. And then 4 years later, all these people buckled back under, and they did it because the American people actually don't care. Um, how do you deal with this? Like it is, like there's a question of like, well, what's the problem? Is the problem the corporations or the people? And the answer is like both, but ultimately the people, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, I think that's right in that, and I think just the evolution of this kind of shows. I mean, people were upset about January 6th for a while, and
That's the
that,
saddest thing I've ever heard.
and people were responding,
Ah!
and people were responding to that, and then now kind of the vibes have changed, and the corporate behavior has changed. I think I am not when it comes to politics. Um, I don't think I'm overly optimistic about where we're heading. If you ask me like what's going to happen in the next 4 years, I mean, I'm not really a predictions person, but I really wouldn't have a lot of great things to say about where we're going and about all of this turning around very quickly. But I'm also not a cynic. I do think that over the long term, that good things can happen and that behavior can change. And so I think the way I look at that, I knew immediately, even as it was kind of exciting as a reporter when you report, you start reporting it, and then one company does it, and I think there were over 100 companies or whatever ended up
Yeah,
changing their policies. So it was
and that
pretty
was all
exciting,
you. I don't know
but
if people listening to the stream realize like Judd made that happen. Like he was the guy on the beat, and it was amazing. It was amazing to watch.
Well, I appreciate that. But I think even at the time, I knew like this is not the end of this story. We have to track this, and we actually maintained on Substack a tracker. We did it for a full 2 years, um, updating it monthly for a full 2 years, keeping track of every corporation who made that pledge. And there was a lot of backsliding well before
Yeah, right.
you
I remember
know
that.
um, Trump kind of reemerged from the ashes here. And the way I look at it is that I think it is, in some sense, disappointing that more corporations didn't kind of stick to their principles. There are a handful. I think we actually did that a few months ago. We're like, well, are there any left? Yeah, there's a few left. Um, but it's good to get them down on record saying these are the things we say we care about. Because now we
Yeah,
know that they said that and that this is a violation of their promises. And I don't know what that means for the future, but I think it's when you know more about how a organization or a company acts, I think that can be important in the future. Certainly I think everyone is going to be more skeptical if this current kind of tide turns and all of a sudden people care about racism again, or they care about misogyny again, if those things aren't like widely sort of accepted as okay again, that we're going to people may want to demand more than just the statement um, from these companies, and that over time can be important. So I kind of take the long view of it, and I also recognize as a reporter you don't have control over 99.999% of things. So all
Yeah.
you could do is just try to chip away and maybe things out there, get things out there that are true. You hope that people take that seriously and act. But then there's all sorts of stuff that's going on that you don't have control, but you just keep on churning away. And obviously, like you don't do it just yourself, but the whole as a group of people, as a whole society, if enough people kind of are caring about trying to get the real story out there, that over time that's going to maybe create a slightly better world than it would have been had it all remained under darkness. And that's what's kind of, I think, to me, that's what's the one thing that's really invigorating about this time is there is so much going on that is behind the shadows that it's overwhelming to me just how many messages I get on a daily basis of people are saying, oh, you need to look into this, you need to look into this, here's an email, here's a document. I mean, so much is going on, and I do think it's important. I'm not able to even deal with 10% of these things, but I do think it's important that as much as possible that's important gets out there.
All right, I'll give you my last question since you did two
Yeah,
in a row. Who's more dangerous right now, Trump or Musk?
it's Musk. I mean, to me,
Tell
um,
me more.
one, I think that we'll see what happens, but I do think that Trump's pretty old, so that's one thing that's a time limiter on him, and he's also, I think, you I hesitate to say this definitively, but he is term limited. So he does have only
Is he
a few
though?
years left. I mean, obviously you never know what's going to happen and I'm not predicting it, but I think that if I think that chances are better than not that he this is his last term. And as a result, he's limited. He also
Ah, we lost Judd. Well, that's too bad. Guys, we ran really long. These things were originally supposed to be 20 minutes, and they just keep expanding. So good show, long show. Thanks to Judd for being here. If you're not onto popular information, go and hit subscribe on the Substack. He really does do the Lord's work. It's original reporting, and it's holding power to account. It's great stuff. Guys, we'll be back next week with another one of these. I think I have Noah Smith next week. No promises. Catch you then. Bye.
Hey, YouTube fam, if you want to support the Bulwark, the best way to do it is by becoming a YouTube Bulwark Plus member. The Bulwark is truly independent. We have no corporate overlords. We're not settling any dumb lawsuits with Trump. By joining, you help support our work, and you can get a bunch of perks right here on this platform. Ad-free content, bonus videos, live streams, and some emojis of me, which I guess some people want. So come join, come hang out, become a Bulwark YouTube Plus member, and I'll be seeing you in the comments. So behave.